Well, folks, when Hamas is thanking you for your help, you know you're doing it wrong. Hamas spent yesterday thanking the country of Canada. So literally a spokesperson for Hamas yesterday issued a video thanking the Canadian government for calling for a ceasefire. Guys, if Hamas is thanking you, you're doing it wrong.
By Canada, Australia, and New Zealand backing sustainable ceasefire in Gaza. We welcome these developments and consider them in the right direction toward isolation the fascist Israeli government globally and ending the longer ever occupation in our modern time.
Okay, that's Hamas literally thanking Western governments. Again, when a terrorist group thanks you, you're doing it wrong. Meanwhile, Hamas is rejecting Israel's offer to stop fighting for a week, for a hostage deal to go forward. They say, no, you have to stop firing on us before we are going to offer you anything. Meanwhile, as of this morning, Hamas was firing its largest barrage of rockets into Tel Aviv that it has for a couple of weeks, like 30 rockets falling toward Tel Aviv. So much for the ceasefire. There is no ceasefire. Hamas knows it. It's all a tactic by Hamas. Are you traveling for the holidays? If so, Pure Talk has you covered because they just added international roaming to over 30 countries. That's correct. Whether you're making calls on a beach in the Bahamas, on the steps of Buckingham Palace, or at your villa in Santorini, you can dial away. And here is the best part. There is no rate increase. Pure Talk still saves the average family almost $1,000 a year with plans starting at just $20 a month. Pure Talk is the gift that keeps on giving. They put you on America's most dependable 5G network. The coverage is second to none. So stop dragging your feet. Switch on over to Pure Talk, a veteran-owned wireless company with simply the best U.S. customer service team. Now with international roaming to over 30 countries. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro right now and make that switch. You'll also save an additional 50% off your very first month of coverage. That's puretalk.com/Shapiro to start saving on wireless today. I've been using Pure Talk for all of my calls for years at this point. The coverage is excellent. They share a big tower network with one of the big guys. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro. Start saving money today. Pure Talk is simply smarter wireless. And again, when you go to puretalk.com/Shapiro, you save an additional 50% off your very first month of coverage. This season, why not give the gift of comfort to everybody on your list, including yourself, with new Tommy John underwear, loungewear, and PJs. Right now, Tommy John has their huge end-of-the-year sale with up to 75% off. Make giving Tommy John a holiday tradition for all the men and women in your family. With over 20 million pairs sold and thousands of five-star reviews, Tommy John doesn't have customers, they have fanatics. One Tommy John fanatic raves, quote, fantastic Christmas gift that went so right, she loves the pajamas. By the way, Tommy John stuff, again, I have Tommy John. My wife has all sorts of Tommy John stuff. It is phenomenal stuff. Tommy John loungewear is cozy enough to use as sleepwear, stylish enough to wear for a quick stroll to the coffee shop. You won't look like you rolled out of bed, even though you probably did. Tommy John's loungewear is guaranteed to fit perfectly comfy, non-pilling micro-modal fabric, no lint balls or fuzz, luxuriously soft, tri-blend fabrics with flexible four-way stretch. Shop Tommy John's end-of-year sale happening right now. Enjoy huge savings of up to 75% off at TommyJohn.com/Ben. Again, that's up to 75% off only for a limited time at TommyJohn.com/Ben. Visit TommyJohn.com for details. TommyJohn.com/Ben. Looking at the national polls, Donald Trump is experiencing, unsurprisingly, a fairly significant bump after the Colorado Supreme Court just did what it did. According to the latest Quinnipiac poll, Trump is up nationally 67% to 11% for DeSantis and 11% for Haley. So 2/3 of the national vote behind Donald Trump. In the various states, you can see Trump continuing to lead fairly significantly. So in Iowa, the latest Fox Business poll has Trump up at 52%, DeSantis at 18%, and Nikki Haley at 16%. So even if you combined both of their percentages, they would be at 34%, 18% behind Donald Trump. So he has a significant lead over in Iowa. New Hampshire is a bit of a different story. According to a new CBS poll, New Hampshire, Trump is at 44%, but Nikki Haley is at 30%. Chris Christie is at 12%. So if you added together Chris Christie's support and Nikki Haley's support, if Christie were to get out of the race, as he should, that would look like a competitive state. Then he'd move down south to South Carolina, and things could theoretically get a little interesting because, of course, Nikki Haley is the former governor of South Carolina. Nationally speaking, the Trump versus Biden polls, they are tightening a little bit. Quinnipiac has Biden up 1, 47 to 46. Economist YouGov has them tied at 43. Morning Consult has Trump up by 2 at 44 to 42. And again, this is how it works. As Trump gets back in the headlines, the polls tend to tighten between Trump and Biden. This is why anybody who is suggesting that it's going to be a runaway for Trump, I don't see the evidence for that. Anybody who's suggesting that it's going to be a runaway for Biden, I don't see the evidence of that either. This thing could seriously go either way, and a lot is dependent on the candidate's strategy. So Joe Biden is going to try to run a basement strategy and it's not going to work because he's the current president of the United States. Donald Trump should be running a basement strategy. If Donald Trump runs a basement strategy in 2024, if he does exactly what Joe Biden did in 2020, if he just goes down to his basement and watches Shark Week from now until the election, very solid shot that he becomes president again. But one of the big problems that the RNC is having is this is a big election year, not just for Donald Trump, but for the Republican Senate, for example. So Republicans have the upper hand in a bunch of Senate races that they need in order to regain the majority in the Senate. But the RNC has no cash because all the money is getting sucked up into Trump world. And Trump doesn't spend the cash on Republican candidates in these various areas. According to Rob Pryors, who is a political junkie research director for the California Target Book, he has statistics on RNC cash on hand at the end of November by year. In 2016, the RNC had $21 million on hand. In 2018, $27 million. In 2020, $58 million. 2021, $65 million. As of 2023, the RNC cash on hand is less than $10 million, meaning no one is giving to the RNC. That's a real problem if you're looking at a bunch of competitive congressional races and Senate races where Donald Trump is not going to spend one iota of his time. That is the reality of the race. And so, again, the idea that Trump is just going to walk away with this thing, I understand that Trump doesn't like strategy and Trump really does not like planning. His on-the-ground game is not really existent. He sort of throws it out there and then hopes and prays that victory will emerge. Maybe it will. I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying that right now the RNC is short on cash. Trump has no ground game and no actual strategy in a lot of these states. The best thing he could do right now is get some pros on board to actually run the on-the-ground, get-out-the-vote campaign if he wins the primaries, which presumably he will. And then he needs to go to the basement and shut up and watch Joe Biden be a bad president. Speaking of which, Joe Biden's presidency, it continues to be a mess. He cannot take clear political positions on nearly anything. So on the one hand, you have the State Department for the United States saying that Israel should basically be allowed to defend itself by taking out Hamas, which is good. Your Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, saying that yesterday.
What is striking to me is that even as, again, we hear many countries urging the end to this conflict, which we would all like to see, I hear virtually no one saying, demanding of Hamas that it stop hiding behind civilians, that it lay down its arms, that it surrender. This is over tomorrow if Hamas does that. This would have been over a month ago, 6 weeks ago, if Hamas had done that. And how can it be that there are no demands made of the aggressor and only demands made of the victim? So it would be good if there was a strong international voice pressing Hamas to do what's necessary to end this.
Hey, obviously that's good, but at the same exact time, the United States is now negotiating with the Mos Eisley of international politics, a wretched hive of scum and villainy, the United Nations, in order to facilitate the passage of some sort of UN Security Council resolution about ceasefires and humanitarian aid and all the rest. It's just a mess of policy inside the Biden administration because apparently they lack the courage of their own convictions. So the reason that you have this mass confusion inside the White House is because they can't take a moral stand. Too many of their supporters are either radical leftists or weak liberals. And when I say weak liberals, I mean people who are willing to cave to radical leftists if they believe the situation so requires. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.